today's video we're going to be fitting this brand new carpet runner to these old Victorian stairs. Keep going.
This is good.
This is going to be the first time for me doing a runner. I've done a couple of small rooms in the house, carpeting. The rest of the bigger ones we've left to the pro. This looked like a reasonable task to have a go at. We've got our runner, which has been made up by Stonegate Carpets. I mentioned them in the last video. They did a really good job. So that's ready to go, and they've given us some excess in length so that there is one joint that is come in two sections, so we'll have to join it in the crotch of one of the middle stairs. So first thing I'm going to do is check the width of our runner, because all the other measurements come from that. So 65 is what we asked for. We got 65.5. So I guess the whipping on the outside is what's making up that. So that's fine. That's what we had planned for. What we need to do next is then cut our gripper rods, and they need to allow for the runner to sit down onto the step either side of the underlay. So they're actually not the same width. They're going to be slightly shorter. So I've seen all the pros, and I know they use snips for all these gripper rods, but we're going to make do with a little trim tool. Yeah. I've just got to measure up for the underlay. The gripper rod is going to sit away from the riser by 30mm. That makes sure that the carpet goes all the way into the crotch, so if you ever wanted to put the brass stair rods on there, that they would slot in fine. Help us when it comes to lining them up in the centre of each tread. I'm just going to mark the centre of all of the underlay pads and all of the gripper rods. Now just measuring the middle of each of the treads, so that when we come to put the grippers on and the underlay, we can just line them up. We don't have to measure each time. It might be worth putting it on the riser as well. Give it a push. Keep going.
This is good. Yeah. Whee!
Okay, a few quick pointers before we move on any further. I've only done the underlay on the treads and just kind of lapped it over the nosing. That was a suggestion from about half of the retailers who sell these carpet runners. The other half say take it down to the next gripper. The only problem really is on this staircase, because we've got an open string staircase where you can kind of, the cut strings you can see through. If you have that, it's going to hold it off even more, and there's a chance that it's, you know, you're going to see the underlay underneath. But on the flip side, the other argument is it's going to prevent the wear from where your heels catch there. So there's two options really. I'm going to go this way. I don't think your heels are really going to catch there because it's quite an overhang on our nosing. And I'm also just taken the corner off here, and I saw that mentioned in a few places, and that's just going to help conceal the underlay completely, so where it comes over, where we kind of look in from the side, you won't catch a glimpse of that. The reason these are slightly further apart than if you were just doing conventional stair carpeting on the full width is because if you were to have rods with a runner, you kind of want that crotch area so you can sit the rod in slightly further. If you know you're not going to have the rods, then you could close them up slightly, but that's how I've left them. And you want to make sure that these spikes are pointing towards where the riser and the tread join there, so that when you push the carpet in, it's kind of acting like a barb and it's going to hold it in there. When it comes to the top, our carpet's going to come over and kind of tuck in under this nose. The runner is going to stop just under there. Now I could take off this moulding under here, but I quite like it matching everything else on the way down. So what I'm going to do is I've actually just gone ahead and put 4 screws in there, and I know that this actually slots up into the joinery, so it's really solid. I'm actually going to join the runner. I'm going to start the runner off on that moulding. This is the runner, and we're going to work from the top down. You can do both, but for ease I think we're going to start at the top. And you can see it's two-tone. We picked the centre colour here is going to be the same as the landing and going up the top stairs, but we've had them joined on the back, and I think they're fused with heat underneath through this foil, and then they've whipped the edge there to give us that nice edging. So the top edge is already a nice square cut. I checked that with a square. One quite handy tip that the guys gave me on the phone was to, as I'm laying the carpet, we want to make sure our spaces either side are identical to keep it parallel with the stairs. So knowing that I need 90mm either side, rather than just keep measuring each time, they suggested just having a strip of foam underlay on each side, so we can just sit on each tread as we go. So it was getting pretty late last night, so I wrapped it up. The kids were going to sleep anyway, so I've still got about 2/3 to do. You can see there's a join in our runner, and I've made sure that join, I've just cut it and made sure the join is higher up the staircase because I don't want it to be visible from the hallway, so it's above eye level. So I was kind of doing the initial bolstering just by hand, but you can only do that so hard. So I was kind of working that in, and then just using the rubber mallet, which is decorated in cement still, going along and just kind of really getting it in there, and then that gives you that quite nice sort of neat crease all the way along each step. Got our join here. I'm just tucking, I've tucked the first one right down behind their gripper. I'm just trying to blend them in a bit here. So we're on the home stretch now. It's a little bit easier to get some camera angles down here so you can see what I'm doing. It's not been straightforward. I've actually gone back up and relayed this runner once because it's not very forgiving in that if you are a degree or so off on your angle, or your top cut isn't perfectly square, it can start to creep one way or the other. And although I'm using these pads just to make sure I've got that space, I could see it was going towards the wall, and that I had to go back up and correct that and just keep an eye on that on the way down. If you were using like a natural flooring or like sisal, I imagine you could mould that a little bit more and tweak it on each step. This is actually quite rigid because it's such a thick carpet. One thing I didn't mention right at the beginning is the more you bang around on the stairs, the more likely they are to creak. So when we were laying that gripper rod, these are very solid 2-inch treads and risers. They're really, really substantial, so I wasn't too concerned about it. But I was careful when I was hammering it in. I wasn't going, you know, crazy about it. In a newer build, you might find that your stairs, they're relying on glue as much as anything. And as soon as you start banging around on those joints, on those treads and risers, they can start detaching from each other, and that's what starts the creaking. And then you've got a right nightmare because you need to get to the back of them really to sort that out. So you could screw them, I guess, if you had to. That would be a little bit more of a delicate way of doing it. And even banging them in like this with the bolster, although you really do need to give it a fair whack, you don't want to start disturbing the staircase structure too much. Good. 3 more to go. I think it's time to crack out the vacuum, hoover up all our woolly mess, and then I need to look at these bottom steps just to get those right. So it's looking pretty good. We are almost finished now. Of course this is coming at it from a DIY point of view, so if you're a pro, you probably shouldn't be watching this video anyway, because you'll know things already, but you know, you might have differing opinions. If you've got constructive advice, stick it below. But there's a few things I haven't mentioned yet. Of course, we haven't tucked it under each nose in that style. We've done the waterfall style, I think they call it. So the French cut, I think it was, or Hollywood style, where you actually tack it under there, is an option. So first time, I think we did all right. There's a few things I reckon I could have got it a tiny bit tighter, and I might just go over again and just really bolster it down into the crotch of each step to make sure it's as tight as it possibly can be. We've still got to sort out those curved steps at the bottom, which I'm going to have a play with in a minute. But yeah, I'd say this is a pretty achievable DIY project. The difference is between a runner and a cut carpet is, with the runner, you can't really go too far wrong because they're making it, or you're either buying it as a pre-made runner or you're having it made to size. So you haven't actually got any cuts to make. So where you've got a big room to do and you've got to cut around a fireplace and around the architrave, you know, that's where you're going to mess up. So that's why I tend to leave the bigger rooms to the pros, like I'm going to do for the landing. We'll get the fitter in to do that. But I think when it comes to the staircase, it's a pretty achievable DIY project, so give it a go. Now it's just about to get a little bit more tricky. We've got to our last 2 steps and both of those are curved. Because it's such a rigid carpet, we can't really mould it round easily, so I think we're going to have to cut and do these in separate sections. We're finally at the bottom of the stairs. I've fast forwarded through this sort of bullnose steps at the bottom here because they're a bit of a pain, and I was kind of making it up as I went along. Basically, they're just, you have to have 2 sections on these ones, and you have to make a couple of little slits to get to the shape. It's not like a normal carpet where you can do that and get away with it. Because we've got the line of the runner and we've got the edging, you really have to kind of tweak it as you go and trying to match it as best you can. So we've got this kind of sweeping bend again, which does leave a bit of a gap there. So I am contemplating cutting another join here, which would mean we'd have a join in the crotch, which is fine, but it means that I could scribe this to sit down on that riser and then cut this piece shape to the step to again slot in. The only thing is you'd have a a cut where that threaded whipped edge is, so you'd have to kind of tidy that up a little bit as well. Any other conventional runner, you'd bring it all the way down like we were doing up there, and then when you get to the bottom of the first riser, you just fold it back up under itself, and then that can be attached to the riser. The problem we've got is, well, not the problem, but the situation we've got is under this old carpet, which is down here temporarily by the doorway, we've got our Victorian tile floor. This is going to be restored very shortly, so the last thing I want to do is put our carpet right down to that and then be dealing with all the cleaning solutions and everything right next to that carpet. I could tape it and mask it off, but I think it's best to just, we've got plenty of the carpet left. I can put this section in when we're all finished. It's just a one piece tacked in there to finish the lot. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll give you some final finishing shots of the staircase. I'm going to do a full video which will cover everything from day one of the staircase renovation right to the end, and then you can kind of see everything that's been involved. A massive thank you to the guys at Stonegate Carpets for making this able to be in before Christmas. It's not a paid placement or anything like that, but when you find a good supplier, it's worth sharing. So thank you to them. I'm going to put a link to their website below. Another thing I just noticed whilst I'm tidying up is, because it's the right width when it comes to you usually, or you've had it made especially, there's very little waste, and actually the only bit of waste is a bit of underlay. And a little top tip to finish off with is that if you have work trousers like this where you could have removable knee pads, usually when I would lay in the patio I had the big sort of rubber ones that slide up inside there, but actually for day-to-day stuff, a little wedge of underlay slides up in there, and then you've got some free knee pads. Don't tell me I don't give you anything. I hope that helps anyone who's up for laying their own carpet runner. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up below, and if you haven't subscribed to, please do. We've got regular updates, regular videos coming out each week, doing all sorts of things around the house, different projects, and we'd love to have you part of the channel. So thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.